a drawing video at the start of our Brain Tech Support Lab today. Kenzo from Love Life Drawing made a fantastic video the other day about replacing our usual phone addictions with drawing. And I think it's a great practice to explore, because so often we've gotten accustomed to waking up in the morning and we're immediately on our phones, right? Scrolling, we're immediately like looking for stuff, chasing stuff outside of us to give us something to do, to give us something to control, to give us something to react to. I find personally that when I wake up, it's really useful to like do something rather than just immediately be in that passive situation of just like scrolling something. Because I find with intrusive thoughts, in many ways we end up just scrolling in our heads. Dylan, good morning. When we're scrolling in our heads, running through memories and through thoughts, I'm drawing motivation right now. When we are scrolling through our heads, we just teach the brain to always do that. When we do it with our phones, again, we're just practicing the same skill, that we should be chasing something to get certainty about, something to get control about. So when we wake up, I think when we make something, when we create something, it's a very different experience and it's useful for us. There we go. I made the classic, it may be backwards, but that says motivation. Do we know is a unicorn fart? You don't have to be you don't have to be the best drawer like this. This is obviously the best drawing that many of us have ever seen. It's not about like being good, and I think that's the other weird thing we do with this, where if we expect exploring something like drawing has to be about like doing it good or doing it right. It's not about that. It's that we are doing something and creating something rather than immediately getting caught up in the scrolling and controlling machines. In winter, good evening. Lost in life. It is indeed Mother's Day. Big shout out to all of the mothers out there. Floyd, thank you. Floyd, you've been Floyd doing I've really enjoyed the drawings that you've shared on the Discord server and in our meditation sessions. Thank you. I think we were talking about drawing recently, and this is and just so everybody knows, the link to the video Kenzo made over on his channel Love Life Drawing is in the description down below, so check that out. Detailed live drawing sessions. We were talking about drawing in our little Blue Cliff Record study group as well, because I think there's a neat drawing exercise that many of you may be familiar with, but is one of the ways that we can understand, one of the most practical ways we can understand how perception interferes with how we're processing the world. And that is the drawing exercise you may have heard of before, where if you're gonna draw a person from a photograph, you flip the photograph upside down, because we have so many judgments and beliefs and ideas and filters through which we perceive people. So that when we start trying to draw a person accurately, we tend to do it incorrectly. Because we're not drawing the person we see, we're drawing our beliefs and the filters and the judgments. So we flip it upside down. We look at it from a different perspective. So to kind of trick ourselves to get around those preconceived notions of person or what that person should look like. It's useful to consider, and this is what we were discussing in the Blue Cliff record group. So if you're not familiar with it, it's a pretty old Zen text. And it's full of koans and then discussions of the koans. And so the particular koan was kind of getting at this idea that our perception of the world is so skewed through our judgments and beliefs, these filters that are in many ways based on our fears or our cravings, that we don't see the world as it is. And so sometimes to understand the world, we need to flip it upside down in terms of our perspective or how we're viewing something so that we can actually see it accurately. And so this is all coming to a relevant point, I swear. And so this is relevant when we're talking about mental health, intrusive thoughts, fears, because so often we will be caught up in a perception of ourselves or perception based around our thoughts and images and feelings in our heads that is very skewed, that also then warps how we're seeing the world, how we're seeing relationships. It warps our perception of ideas. This comes up a lot when we're exploring things like somebody, say, starting a business or exploring artistic adventures, because they may see a really great idea that's useful to do, but then they look at that idea through the lens of their fears, and then they decide not to do it. Or they're looking at a relationship, maybe a relationship they think they want, looking at it through the lens of their fears. So they're looking for things to alleviate the fears, or they're looking at a relationship based on a skewed perception of themselves. It's useful to consider the filters of beliefs and judgments through which we're seeing the world. And drawing is one of those ways you can start to recognize your own filters and how to get around them. I'm part of the drawing study group that Kenzo runs through, so he has a website that you can check out, and there's like a study group and all sorts of things there around life drawing. And one of the things I really like about the skills he teaches there is often we're looking at shapes and shadows and different values as a way to learn how to draw, rather than just trying to draw right or trying to draw some kind of perfect idea of what we're seeing. Because when we do that, we tend to not draw what's actually in front of us, which is fascinating. So yeah, drawing. And also, because I think sometimes when we talk about drawing, people immediately start to talk about their judgments about themselves, right? Oh, my drawing almost flew away. I could have lost my most valuable piece of artwork. And put my tripod on top of it. When we start to talk about drawing, and this comes up all the time, like when we've been doing the workshops. When we do a workshop that involves a bunch of drawing exercises, we've been doing the Draw Yourself as a Garden workshop in different cities around the world this past year. And so, when we start out the workshop, one of the things I'll always do is have people draw themselves. I always want to do that at any kind of workshop as one of the first activities, partly for what I was talking about earlier when I mentioned drawing in the morning, so that we're immediately creating something rather than being in a passive position. I find that's really important at a workshop too, that if a bunch of people are coming together, we don't want the first thing they do to just sit there and like be told a bunch of stuff, or just sit there and be passively listening to somebody. I also always want to emphasize the workshop is for the participants. So it shouldn't be about me talking a bunch at the start. They should be talking and sharing. And then I will talk and share. So I always have people draw themselves first. But whenever you immediately suggest to a group of people to draw themselves, a lot of people, the fear comes up right away. So also we do it because we're immediately working on fear, because a lot of people will say, oh, I'm not good at drawing, or oh, my drawing's gonna be terrible. And it touches on something sensitive because also people are drawing themselves. But it's not about making it good or whatever we would judge in that way. It's just about creating. And that's just an amazing thing we can practice and celebrate. So yeah, maybe check out Kenzo's video and see, maybe we could all spend a bit more time creating instead of being on our phones. Away with Fairies, thank you so much for the kind words and gratitude. Gratitude to you for being here today. Oh, Snow Knight, you're looking for the best advice about life. My best advice about life would be to stop looking for best advices about life. Jack, I'm sorry to hear you're being bullied. Theo said, I drew a character illustration into a book publication. Then I tried flipping it after it already went into print and realized I drew wrong some parts, and now the book feels contaminated in my mind. Oh, Theo, if you've created something and it's in a book, then it's useful for us to just celebrate it. You can see there how checking something, if we check something, we'll always find something wrong and something contaminated. So it's really useful to celebrate what we make. If we made something, we celebrate that it's out there. Adam, thanks for stopping by. Carol, you said, what mental health skill would you recommend for a mind that is very active in the morning and has trouble resting or taking naps? I want to be excellent at napping. So I'm gonna just guess here that you're not wanting to nap in the morning, right? If we have a very active mind in the morning, so there's a couple things. So one, just like we were talking about with drawing, it's useful to consider what we're going to do first thing in the morning. Because we don't want to just go, oh, my mind's really active. Okay, let's do a bunch of compulsions with it. So what are the activities you're going to do in the morning? But even more so than the morning, I'd be really curious about what's happening the night before and what's happening in the day before. Our brain, I would describe it like a puppy. Like we're just constantly teaching it what to do. So if we've been teaching the puppy to run around and around and around and around and around, then the puppy is gonna do that and run around and around and around and around. You mentioned naps there and struggling with naps. So I'd be curious about what's happening before a nap. Like for instance, if I'm on my phone, like scrolling and scrolling and scrolling and scrolling and looking for things and checking things and trying to control things, and then I go, wow, that's exhausting, because it is. I want to take a nap. It makes sense my brain won't nap, because it is like running a dog around and around and teaching it to play and play and play, and now it's going to be all wound up, and then I'm like, oh, that's exhausting. Let's sit or rest and lie down. The brain's going to keep on going, especially if we notice that we always try to fill empty space. We're like, oh, this is boring. I got to do something. Or, oh no, I have a moment. Quick, let's go scrolling. Then we've been teaching it to always fill empty space with doing a thing. So then if we lie down to rest, the brain is just like, why are you not doing anything? I will give you something to do. And it keeps running around. So broadly throughout life, do you see opportunities to pause? It can be useful to start practicing pauses. So even when we're not stopping to what we would see as rest, but just recognizing we don't always need to be doing something. And including in the mornings can be a fun time to explore. Maybe doing something like drawing instead. Oh, Way with Fairies, thank you. Oh, Minchi, thanks for joining. He said, how do I work on cutting compulsions while still being kind to myself? So I find that cutting out compulsions is kind. So I'd be curious there. Like, I'd be curious, why does it seem right now that cutting out compulsions is unkind? Because it can help to see the compulsions like fuel the anxiety. The compulsions really make us more anxious. They create more uncertainty. They create more doubt. So when we're doing the compulsions, we're really creating all sorts of problems and difficult feelings for us. And if we're cutting out the compulsions, we're really giving ourselves a chance to be ourselves, giving ourselves a chance to experience emotions and life. We get to do much less work because the compulsions are so much work. Like if we're checking for reassurance again and again and again, that's so exhausting. So we can be kind to ourselves by letting ourselves rest. So yeah, right now though, if the compulsions seem like they're being unkind, I'd be curious why that is. There might be something interesting to explore there. It might get really windy out here. Ariel, I see you asked, what does forgiveness mean to you and how to forgive others? I don't really, I would say I don't have a particular definition of forgiveness, and I don't know what I don't really think about forgiving others, because I find that gets wrapped up in a lot of the transactional stuff we're always doing anyway. It helped me to see, because then also like we'll do that to ourselves where we won't forgive ourselves, and it I think speaks to just a whole, I don't know what you would call it, an entire perspective on life that is very transactional. And so I would if we even just completely removed the concept of forgiveness, right? Because we're not trying to fix or clean away some past thing. Then what would you do? Fabio said, I recently started a relationship with someone that I love, and I noticed that my friend OCD started creating obsessions involving my girlfriend. Should I tell her about those obsessions? No, I don't. I wouldn't recommend it. I'd be curious, why is that your question there? I've always encouraged people with a relationship to look at, like actually identify some values just for relationships. So what are the actions you want to do in a relationship? And actually identify those. Like, they can be specific to this relationship you have with that person and relationships in general. And I say in general, because so this question of should I tell my partner about my obsessions comes up a lot. And so I ask people to like, write out all the actions that would be useful to a relationship that you would tell somebody else. And then is telling my partner about my obsessions, is that one of the actions that you think would be useful? Sometimes there absolutely is a point in a relationship, just like with farting, where you it may become very natural to maybe fart around a partner. Yeah, so also your obsessions, same thing. Some indigestion from an organ, but why are they getting attached with so much importance? There's probably a bunch of other compulsions going on there. Oh, Dylan, yeah, we have great palm trees today. Buen dia. Okay, Dylan, thanks for letting me know about the wind. Yeah, it's kind of a gentle breeze. I assume it'll kind of stay like this. just scrolling down. To see how we're doing. Okay, now let's scroll back up. We grab the questions. Okay, Leo, you said, how do you deal with social anxiety talking to a girl that you like? So very similar to what we were just talking about with relationships. Like, what are the actions we want to do? Because it's so useful for us to learn how to do those actions with feelings or thoughts, right? Like, if we're having some kind of obsession, if we're having some kind of intrusive thought, if we're having some kind of emotion, like anxiety, we can still do the actions that are useful to us, that are useful to the interaction that we're having, that are relevant to the values we've set. So what can be helpful in a social situation is identifying some kind of value or intention, identifying the actions that line up with it, and then committing to doing that action with whatever feelings come up. So if we're talking to somebody, rather than trying to, if we're talking to somebody we like, rather than trying to like control what they think and like control how we feel, exploring an action like, I want to get to know this person, and that's it. I'm not here to try to get them to like me. I'm not here to try to control my feelings or their feelings in any way. I simply want to learn about them, and that's it. And so what are the actions of learning about them? Like, what are the kinds of questions I'm going to ask? And I want to do those with any thought or feeling. So if I'm anxious or not anxious, doesn't determine whether this is a good or bad experience. I'm only measuring this experience based on, do I get to know this person? So am I learning about them? Am I, understanding more about their life? And that is it. Oh, that dog barked at me. It was a very small dog. I don't know if we'll get to see it in the background. And Leo, I see you asked a question there too. And how do you deal with someone else's anger? It's the same thing there. Like if we look at something like social anxiety or anger as experiences we don't want to have, the idea of dealing with them, unfortunately, we're usually like, we want to do something about it and get rid of it. But what if it's okay? Like if somebody's angry, they're angry. We get into challenges when we start to change our actions to manage a feeling, whether that's like managing anxiety or managing somebody's anger, etc. So what if it's about actions you value doing? That doesn't mean you have to stay around somebody who's angry. You very much, you may look at your values and realize, oh, actually, I'm kind of sticking with this person who's angry because I'm trying to get reassurance they're no longer angry at me. Well, what if we don't have to do that either? Yeah, if they're angry, that's their issue to deal with. There's a pigeon approaching my foot right now. I don't have any food for it, and I wouldn't. Pigeon, I'm not going to give you anything. Adam, how do I be the person I want to be? I don't like who I am, if that makes sense, and I want to be a different person. How do I do that? That's kind of vague, right? You can see how that's pretty vague, right? Well, what if you can like yourself as you are, because that you are you already, but also if there's something you want to grow on that, it's going to be much easier to do it from a place of liking yourself rather than going, I don't like this, I want it to change. And this is across the board. This is even when we're working on mental health stuff. It's so useful to like ourselves and where we're at, because if we're hating on ourselves, well, we still are the only person we have to do anything we want to do. And so it's very difficult to do that kind of from a sense of lacking, like going, oh, this isn't right, I should be somebody different. because now you've got to work with the person you've just declared isn't right. It is like having a colleague and the colleague shows up and you're just like, I'm never going to be able to do anything with this guy. Well, but that's who you're working with. So even if you want to change things, it's way more useful to like the person we're working with. And then actually we can make a lot of changes and do a lot of things differently. But from that place of adding and growing, rather than seeing ourselves as this like hole that needs to get filled in. It's much more useful to see yourself as whole rather than a hole. You know what I mean? In winter, I said how to let go of the idea that I am a contaminated person and start living. And so that concept there, the idea that we have to let go of something and then we're going to start living, that's just one of the ways the brain keeps us trapped. It's the same as saying, how do I get rid of this contamination so I can leave the house? And no, we identify what are those actions of living. So when you say start living, what are the actions that you want to do to get living? And then it's about doing them while feeling contaminated. Yeah, Minji, you see, cutting compulsions feels very exhausting because I have to expose myself to experiences I don't like. I now realize I'm judging the experiences. Yeah, so, and look though, too, because sometimes when we talk about exposure, like I find it really useful to look at what are those actions I want to be doing in life. And so we're building those exercises, those ERP exercises around things we want to be doing, and we're looking at how to make it easy. So yeah, we might have an experience, say uncertainty, while we're doing something we value in life, but then we're not going to do the compulsions around that uncertainty. If you feel like right now you're having to like make up exposures that are just unpleasant experiences, if you're doing that because you want to get rid of unpleasant experiences, yeah, sometimes that can just be us basically doing exposures as compulsions. So I'd watch out for that. I'd really look at what are those things you want to be doing in life? What are those skills you want to learn? Because yeah, some of these skills are challenging, but we approach it just like going to the gym. We say, look, if I want to build strength, then I want to do these challenging workouts where I'm gonna lift some really heavy things. And yeah, it's gonna feel, I might feel sore, I'm gonna be sweaty, I'm gonna be uncomfortable, that's gonna go on for days, but I want to have that experience because I want to build these skills and I want to get good at that thing, right? So even though it's uncomfortable, I am specifically doing an action I want to keep doing in my life. Using physical fitness can be a great model for mental fitness, right? Like, am I actually doing exercises that I want to keep in my life? If we're just doing something because we feel we should, then it might not be as useful. Yeah, Phil's off. Said, should you tell a longtime partner about past OCD struggle themes if they were super sensitive themes? Harm OCD, POCD, but this sounds itself, like why would that be relevant? Because because a very common compulsion people have is confessing about the past because they see it as a contamination and they want to get reassurance their partner would still like them even if they knew they had this contamination, but that itself is just a reassurance compulsion. I would say, yeah, I would only maybe tell, if you're in a relationship where your partner was like, I don't know, tell me about the 5 worst meals you ever had when, 20 years ago or something. If you're into some kind of, I don't know, relationship practice of telling each other about horrible things that happened 20 years ago, or 5 years ago, or 1 year ago. But yeah, otherwise, why? What's the advantage or benefit to each other of that? Ariel. So what do you mean by forgiveness often wrapped in transactional thinking? Like if I forgive someone, I will have peace, and then my brain ended up not giving it. Well, yeah, like I because like why? What are you trying to do with for forgiveness? Yeah, philosoph. I see below. Then you said like after how many years should you tell them? Yeah, I know that all just sounds like compulsion practice time. Kathy, hello to Ecuador. Pilot. Yeah, you just said, what if I'm doing ERP wrong? There's not enough information there to know what you're doing. Oh, and Ferris, yeah, you also said, how do you know that you're doing ACT correctly? Again, yeah, there's not any information there. Uh, this, this like, check, how do I know if I'm doing it right? So just asking that question doesn't give us any information about what you're doing. But also watch out for just in general feeling like, oh, I need to exercise in the right way. Because there's going to be a unique set of skills that you develop and learn that are relevant to your life and context. I'm just scrolling down to the chat first to clean it up. Not that it can't be contaminated, but we could also clean it up a bit. Oh, Leo, you're in Brazil. I'm not in Brazil right now, but I had a funny experience yesterday because I'm in Colombia right now, and I'm in a part of Colombia, Barranquilla, where Shakira's from. There's a Shakira statue here, and I was surprised. I was in the store yesterday, and I'm kind of on a vacation, but we're going to do a live stream today too, and I was going to make some caipirinhas. Right? Classic Brazilian cocktail, because also I feel it's really well suited to being, down by the coast. But when I went to I wonder if it's here right now. No. So I'll share what I was just looking for. When I went to the grocery store, they had like a large liquor store section, and there were a bunch of guys working there. And I was looking around, and like they had a huge wall of whiskey and scotch. And I couldn't find the cachaça. And then so finally I asked them, and then the two guys, they were like, we've never heard of that. And I was explaining like caipirinhas, and I think it's you see the extent to which some of these like large beverage companies really take over like commerce, and this for many different companies in many different areas. Because I would say this is not a climate that's well suited to like scotch. But even at this hotel, they're really pushing. There's carts all around here for Glenlivet. This is not. It's early in the morning and 30 degrees and humid. It's not Scotch weather, but these companies just come in with big marketing budgets, and so you can't, even though it would in a sense just up the coast. From just up the coast and around from Brazil. You can't, I couldn't get cachaça here, and the guys at the store weren't familiar with it. But you can get scotch from the Highlands of Scotland. So I did not make any caipirinhas. Teo. My problem with set values is that there becomes too many because I find myself in different situations which would need different kinds of values. Then I forget about them or get overwhelmed. So why not have more flexible values? Setting some values can be really useful, particularly in situations where we've noticed we've done a lot of compulsions. So we may, for instance, recognize, okay, like when I'm when I'm using my phone or something, or when I'm washing my hands, or I'm making food. I'm gonna have some set values because I know otherwise my brain will just want to do a bunch of compulsions. But then in other situations, I'm actually gonna go into that situation. This is something I do all the time. I'm gonna go into the situation, I'm gonna ask, given the context in which I find myself right now, what do I value doing? And then pick some directions. Values are just like compass directions. So we don't have to just say, I walk north. No, like, I might be walking north in this situation, but then in another situation, yeah, I may pick a different direction. There may be an overarching general direction, but then in particular context, as we navigate the wilderness, we'll pick a different direction while still moving towards that bit larger goal. Artemis, you said, do you recommend ignoring emotions, so not letting them dictate our behavior, and or using them as information to inform future behavior? I would suggest there are other options there. I mean, if I'm not letting emotions dictate my behavior, that doesn't mean I have to ignore them. But it can be really, I would say one of the most enjoyable aspects of recovery has been that now I can have emotions. Whereas in the past I thought, I kind of need to not have an emotion or not feel something because I'd so tightly linked actions to it. I was like, oh, well, if I'm angry, then I must do this. If I'm happy, I can't do these things because those are boring things, and so on. Like there were just all of these rules around emotions. So then I couldn't really let myself have kind of too big or too small of an emotion or whatever, however you want to describe them, because that meant I had to do certain things. And so now it's very enjoyable that I could, for instance, be very, very sad or be very, very happy. And those feelings can come along with me and I'm not ignoring them. I'm still, I might still be like, I'm super sad or I'm incredibly happy today. Well, I take care of this, whatever kind of boring task on my computer that I want to get done because it's going to be useful. And this amazing feeling can just be here with me while I do that. So yeah, what if we don't have to let them dictate our actions, but we can also feel them really deeply and fully? Away with Fairies. Away with Fairies, you should, believe it or not, the tipping point in my OCD recovery was your video where you said, I am a banana. This was years ago. Absolutely epic. Oh, thank you for sharing that, Away with Fairies. I'm glad that was useful. See, I think we do have to flip the world upside down sometimes. And it helps us see the world. Oh, Artemis, you continued here. You said, I feel like my values come from my feelings. Sometimes moving past feelings is better for the long term, but sometimes those feelings are indicators I'm not acting aligned with my values. Yep, it's very possible. Yeah. I think values, one of the ways to look at values is that they're going to take us somewhere that's useful to us, ideally. But also, we may recognize we have a set of values that are taking us somewhere we don't like. And so what I find useful to look at is that, where do we end up? So we're always trying out values and seeing what works for us and what doesn't work. And so yeah, if we try out some values and some actions that don't take us where we want to go, then it's important to be able to recognize that. But I'd say feelings aren't always necessarily an objective gauge of that. I liked so many of my compulsions and they felt good. And so the metaphor I often use for this, I shared in my book, is the person who likes jumping in the water and hates getting wet. And sometimes we see those as very separate when it comes to our actions in our lives related to mental health. And so there is a step often of starting to look kind of accurately or objectively at, am I liking actions and feeling good about actions that are causing the problems I dislike? Because then it's going to be useful to recognize I don't actually like those actions because they're leading to the things I dislike. But yeah, then other times we may very much enjoy something, and it is also, it's not like values are like an unpleasant experience. There's a beautiful bird that just flew by. It was enormous. Pilot said, this is related to how do I know if I'm doing ERP as a compulsion? And he said, I mean, my mind forces me to do things like intentionally think about thoughts while doing an activity. The thing is, in real life, there would be a situation where I'd have to intentionally think. After reading your book and watching your videos, I feel the better ideas would be to not forcibly think about thoughts or push them rather than allow them to be there and do nothing. Yeah, I wouldn't say that we have to do anything with the thoughts up there. They'll take care of themselves. Oh, Deb, thanks for stopping by and see ourselves as whole, complete beings. Nikos said, how to deal with the idea about what others think about me. Yeah, what do you mean by deal? What if it's okay for people to have thoughts about us, good or bad, or in between? And we don't have to do anything particular with that. Oh, now we're gonna have music. And Carol, I think this relates to the question you shared there. You said, how do you deal with, and then you put fame in quotations. But then you said, how do you balance accepting compliments, the greatness of your work, but not being trapped in grandiousness? Yeah, I assume you're talking about the greatness of your work. Like I really enjoy making things and creating the things I create. But the focus, and I recommend, we were talking about this in the presentation I did for OCD Sweden last week or 2 weeks ago. I guess it was last week, just a week ago. I did a presentation with OCD Sweden, and we were talking about social media, so how to take care of your mental health as a mental health advocate online. And I always really encourage people to make it about sharing what you want to share. You give what you want to give, so you create it, and then you're done with it. It's not about positive comments or a negative comment or anything in between. And so really identifying the objective measures to see whether you're hitting goals around sharing, content about really any kind of creative content. And that's always the focus. I mean, because you can always find people who will tell you they dislike what you do. And likewise, I would say to everybody, you're going to always connect with people who like what you do. And so, find those people and then build community with them. And the focus, though, remains on just what can you create and what can you make that's useful. So again, using those values to guide that rather than like checking for some kind of reaction. Ariel said, do you find value in monastic religious practices like fasting and resisting worldly desires as a way for our brains to be easily happy without additional requirements that we often add? I don't do any particular fasting unless I'm at a meditation retreat or something like that. I like meditation retreats. I think though, like I definitely, when I practice meditation, practice and participate in retreats, enjoy a Zen practice. So in the Zen tradition, particularly the Soto Zen tradition. And so Zen very much emphasizes that like you need to practice the skills in real life. So if somebody said, I can only really handle my brain if I avoid a whole bunch of things and I avoid people and I avoid worldly living and I restrict and I restrict and I restrict and I confine, I would say then that person doesn't have the skills. Why can't they practice those same skills surrounded by the real world? And I think it's important that we learn those skills in the real world. But that's very much a Zen tradition approach. I'm sure there are other traditions who are like, no, you must shun everything and go off into the mountains and only be friends with a tree. But that is not the approach I take. Theo, so how do you make big life decisions? I will need to make some risky life decisions soon that will determine my future life for next years, including lifestyle, job, and home. I keep avoiding it. Yeah, for big life decisions, I find maybe two things could be used here. So yeah, absolutely. I find I'll identify values in terms of what direction I'm going in general, but then also values I'll use to make a decision about whatever the decision is. So I'm going to, come up with a way to decide. That's something I would suggest to anybody with even if it's just some kind of work project, if it's a life decision, it really helps to decide how to decide before we start going through it, because the brain, right, is going to love the figuring out and then never let us feel certain about it. So how are we going to make the decision? And how you decide that may just be relevant to that particular decision. You look at a couple things that are going to be important and you pick something. So, and you're not going to know. So a work project decision, I may say, okay, there's a whole bunch of projects I can do. I'm going to pick the project that can reach the most people. And then what I'm figuring out is which one could reach the most people. If it's a life decision, you may say, okay, I'm going to make the life decision that keeps me closest to my dream of opening a donut shop. And then so you're just looking at the different options in terms of which one is most quickly or going to best prepare me to open my donut shop, which is all I've ever dreamed of doing. And then, you base the decision on that. But just giving ourselves some support, because if we just kind of wait for the brain to feel like it knows, it's just going to be doing classic brain stuff. Dylan, I haven't seen Encanto, but it is set in Colombia. Hi, thanks for stopping by. I hope you have a great day too. So Pilot, it looks like, and so maybe you just didn't, the response I shared came after. You shared this, another message about allowing thoughts or trying to force thoughts. If we're trying to prove something to our brain, it's just going to throw up more and more of whatever that is. Leo, thanks for the suggestion to have a Kaiproska. I'm just going to do a quick scroll. Oh, Osiribert, thank you so much for the donation. Thanks for stopping by. I appreciate the support. And Artemis, thank you as well. Oh, thank you for the questions today and taking part in the live stream. I appreciate the support, y'all. Pas de bleu. So pas de bleu, you can see the compulsions aren't just trying to fix thoughts, because the way you, right, notice how you're posting the same things again. Yeah, so you see there that fear. Oh no, if I don't do this, I won't recover. Yeah, if we're already trying to, that's the same as any fear of illness, right? So if we're already like, oh, I've got to do this, or I'm going to have this bad illness and be trapped, we're already doing the compulsions. You see there, the mind, you mentioned the mind saying, I cannot move forward without facing it. So immediately that's a compulsion. So anytime we're like, I cannot do this thing I want to do in life unless I first clean away the bad thing. Yeah, it's always going to be a compulsion. Way with fairies. Yeah, you said, do you find OCD relatable to chronic pain? They'll often. There's been some research on this. I think you usually see it's kind of like inconclusive, but you'll often find experiences of OCD and chronic pain may, people may experience both of them. Yeah, I find it useful in general to approach anxiety as a type of pain. If we just look at, something that really helped me was just looking at unwanted experiences. So I'm not even like differentiating between a particular type of intrusive thought and an anxiety and a physical sensation, because at least for me, my brain would move through all of them. It wasn't specific to the type of unwanted experience, right? It was just about the compulsion. So whatever I would do compulsions around, that was the unwanted experience that my brain would throw up. So if I was like, okay, I'm not doing compulsions around intrusive thoughts, then it might be like just weird physical sensations. And then I had to learn, oh, okay, so my brain is just jumping through all of the possible unwanted experiences to get the compulsions. So it really helped to look at accepting unwanted experiences and giving time and energy to actions I value. One of the areas that we've seen a lot of uptake in acceptance and commitment therapy in ACT is in hospitals, helping patients navigate pain after surgery or navigate chronic pain related to a variety of issues. So in general, and I think when we're talking about different approaches to mental health skills, I would find it important to look at whether a particular skill not only is relevant to thoughts and feelings, but is also relevant to physical sensations, because it's pretty normal. And I see this coming up all the time, like working with coaching clients. It's very common that as we work our way out of doing compulsions around thoughts and feelings, you're pretty guaranteed it's going to jump to unwanted physical experiences. And so we've got to learn to apply the same skills to those. Okay, now I've scrolled down and then scrolled back up too far. There we go. Seaweed kelp said, I'm going through a period of chaos and instability. Understandably, the stress is making it a lot more difficult to stay on top of skills. There is an end in sight soon, but any tips on how to navigate? I don't expect myself to function as well as I would when things are more stable and within my control, but it's frustrating when I feel like I'm losing skills when under distress and I'm unable to be mindful and conscious. So yeah, there's two things that I'd suggest. Something I find really important when we're busy and there's a lot going on, could be things we've chosen to be busy about, or the world is just very chaotic and we're forced into handling a lot going on. It's having a collapsible set of values. So really being able to see what's most important to me and recognizing, okay, look, right now, there's no way that I can do everything. So very quickly, I'm going to take some of those values that are less important and say, we're not going to do those right now. right now, given the amount of time I have in the situation I'm in, maybe I can only do one or two things. But those one or two things I am going to stick with no matter what. And I'm going to celebrate those rather than seeing them as some kind of like not enough issue. Like, oh, I can't do all this other stuff. No, like, I want to do those two things right now that are most important to me. I'm going to be consistent with them, and that's all that matters. When the brain is pointing out, oh, you haven't done this or you haven't done that, I'm like, that's fine, because that is not my plan right now. In the future, when we're in a situation that's a bit calmer, that's less chaotic, then I can practice those other skills. The other thing related to this is that chaos is part of the present moment too. So there's no reason we can't be mindful and present with lots of things going on. Even if the thing we're mindful of in that moment is how distracted we are. That's also what's happening right now. And so again, not judging that either. So with both of those, that skill of non-judgment and kindness to ourselves is going to be useful. Because yeah, maybe we'll notice, because we're doing so much right now, the brain is all over the place and we're all over the place. We can understand why that is. Jesse, yeah, you said, how do you change perspectives or beliefs? With beliefs, I would say that's about changing actions. So we look at what are the beliefs that would be useful to us and what actions align with those. I thought for perspective, there's a question that I'm forgetting. I'm going to misquote it, and so I won't refer to where it came from. But the question would be simply to start to question, like, are you wrong? So when we are looking at perspective, we often just assume our perspective is right, or assume our perspective is useful. But if we've often been running into challenges and ending up in situations we don't enjoy, then can help to consider that maybe my perspective on that situation wasn't so useful. And so just starting to notice when we look at something and we immediately shove it into a box and stick a label on it. What if that label is wrong? And so just starting to have that consideration and that openness that maybe our perspectives are skewed can be really useful. Dylan, yeah, you asked about what will be your role in the OCD camp later this year. Are you doing presentations or something different? Will you be there in person or virtual? I will be there in person. So Talk Mexico. So you can find, I think Talk Mexico is, yeah, if you go on Instagram, you can find them at TOC and Mexico, MEXICO. Yeah, great group of therapists in Mexico who specialize in treating OCD. We've known each other for many years. We recently did the workshop together in Mexico City, and they do an OCD camp in close by to Mexico City. And I think that those kinds of events are so effective for being in a place, really living life and doing some adventures. Well, throughout an entire weekend, really practicing skills to, learn how to handle brain stuff differently and cut out compulsions. I'm going to be helping out. I think I'm doing a workshop, and then I'll be, helping out in the other events, but like I'll actually be leading a little workshop activity. And then I think I'm going to share some yoga and mindfulness practices. And and then just generally helping out with the other activities going on and things like that. I think there's something in particular, because so many of these actions and skills we talk about need to be applied in real life, that something like an OCD camp where, you can put down your phone, you can just focus on learning new skills are so useful. For more details on that, check out, I'll share about it coming up on my Instagram channel as well, but check out Talk Mexico's Instagram channel, TOC Mexico. Teo, yeah, you said, do you write all your values down or just ask yourself the question at the specific situation? Yeah, both. So some values are kind of big and I might put them, write them down and put them in a place where I'm working, and that just helps, guide different decisions. And then others, are just about going into the situation, like going in, like if somebody, struggled with social anxiety, for instance, and they're going to a social event, it can be really useful to just going into that event, pause for a moment, say, hey, in this situation, what do I really value today? Like, maybe what I'm gonna value is just meeting 5 new people. There's nothing else. I don't have to control any feeling. I don't have to fix anything else. The success is entirely about, did I meet 5 new people or not? So Tia, so you said, I end up with 7 stacks of values planned, but then I ignore them if I don't have them in front of me 24/7. Yeah, so it could be useful to look at why you ignore them. Because it's very likely that you are valuing something else. And just, if somebody values getting rid of bad feelings, it's very easy for them to just go, who cares about all those values? I want to get rid of this feeling. And so when you say you ignore them, it could be useful to consider, we're always aligning our actions with values. And so we say, look, I'm always aligning my actions with values. What are the values that I'm making more important than all of these other things? Why am I making those values so important? And because maybe there's a fear there, or there's something I want to get that's not useful to me. Okay, and so what if I was going to value very different things? Pom Pom Kitty, hello. Hope you're doing amazingly too. Minshi said, recovery has been confusing for me. I tried to read and watch to learn all that I could, but I think I might have been doing it all wrong. I think one of the things that I always find important to look at is that, like, doing recovery as a goal just gets us like chasing like different tips and trying to get rid of an experience. And so I find it really useful to put something we want to grow at the center. So it's not about, oh, my goal is recovery. Because you can just do that now. Usually if we think that, oh, my goal is recovery, we mean, oh, I want to get rid of anxiety, or I want to get rid of intrusive thoughts. But then that is the same old compulsion. I want to get rid of a feeling. And so what if we put at the center something we actually want to grow, something we actually want to build? Because then it's not about, am I doing recovery right? It's about, am I doing this thing that I want to keep in my life? And so taking that approach that's about adding something to our lives rather than subtracting. Because if we're adding, then we can easily ask the question, oh, am I adding that thing that matters to me? I am. Okay, then let's continue adding and growing that thing that matters to me. But if we're trying to subtract something, it's usually gonna get us wrapped up in a lot of complications. OCD Bear, they said, what's your advice for someone who is stuck on an existential thought and always questioning their reality? So it can really help to see like existential OCD compulsions are the same as contamination compulsions, except instead of chasing a clean feeling, we're chasing a real feeling, or certainty of being clean and certainty of being real, or that things around us are real, or whatever it might be. So it can help to look at it in that angle. And so when we look at it as contamination OCD, then we know that trying to get the certainty, trying to get the clean, real feeling is the source of the problem. And just like contamination OCD, we are creating the feeling of unreality, just like we create the feeling of contamination because of how we're judging the normal experience. So I used to struggle with contamination OCD, was one of the themes of the many. And so it helped me to recognize that I was just taking the normal feeling of existence and judging it as contaminated, right? I could always feel something on me that I would then judge as some kind of bad contamination, and I would think back through, like, what did I touch? Or why do I still feel that? But all of that was just me judging the feelings of existence as wrong, as contamination. And so we do the same with existential OCD. We're just judging reality as wrong. But because we're judging reality as wrong, we can never get the thing we're chasing, because the thing we're chasing we've already labeled as contaminated. Right? We've already taken the feeling of reality and labeled it as wrong. So we are the source of the problem, and we've got to cut out those compulsions. Trex said, why does the fear of making a mistake actually increase the chances of making one? Yeah, this relates to what I was talking about there with Minchi about focusing on the thing we want to keep in life versus recovery. Because if we're focused on avoiding a mistake, it doesn't mean we're focused on doing something well. It is the equivalent of baking cookies and just focusing on not burning the cookies. Does that mean we're going to make a delicious cookie? It just means we're not going to burn them. And so we're not doing the good thing, we're just trying to avoid the bad thing. And if we're only trying to avoid the bad thing, that usually means we end up not doing the good thing. And so we'll make some kind of mistake because we're so focused just on the fear. So it really helps to ask, how can I bake delicious cookies instead of how can I avoid burning cookies? The avoidance of a bad thing is not the creation of a good thing. Oh, Trex, yeah, you said, how can you identify your values if you're not relying on how things make you feel? So again, that's where the cookie example would come in. Think of a cookie recipe to make delicious cookies. The measurements aren't based on feelings, right? And a delicious cookie, we can identify some kind of objective measures of what makes it delicious, and that's still going to vary from person to person. You know, one person really may like a lot of chocolate oozing out of it. Another person may not like cookies with chocolate. So absolutely, there are going to be differences for all of us. But our feelings, like you can see with compulsions, our feelings are not necessarily useful measures of what's useful to us or our communities. Often we feel like we like doing things that are hugely damaging to ourselves. So I would question even that idea that, like, why does it seem shocking that we wouldn't base values on feelings? Have you seen that your feelings are consistently accurate and useful? They can be a piece of information, absolutely. There are things we may really enjoy and we recognize over time, oh, that's really useful to me. But then we may also, for years, practice compulsions and identify with them and talk about liking those compulsions, see those compulsions as necessary to ourselves. We've built relationships around those compulsions, and they are nothing but destructive to ourselves and others. So yeah, feelings can be a piece of information, but I would look at just the evidence in your life. If 1000% feelings have consistently been the accurate measure of what's useful to yourself and those around you, then yeah, then you can see you've got a great piece of information there. For me, no. They were not a useful guide. Teo said, how do I deal with emotionally contaminated physical possessions? Example, I have some pieces of clothing that if I wear, I get anxious because I have it connected to a bad memory or thought. Yeah, so it's a classic compulsion. And so it can be a lot of fun to give ourselves that freedom and flexibility to wear whatever we want. So in the emotional contamination, it can help to see like there's a bunch of compulsions going on there. To see the item as contaminated. What if it is just a piece of clothing that you want to wear? And if you get anxious, you can also get anxious. And that can be a feeling that you have. And then I see down below, you said, yeah, and that it's in the back of your mind constantly, even after days, and it distracts me from focusing on life. So the compulsions are there, so the spending the time and energy on it, but then also when you say it distracts me from focusing on life, so why? What's going on in there? And what would you risk if you were going to allow that to be there and not need to get fixed? And that's probably going to be the thing to work on. Freddie said, I haven't been back here in a while because I've just been living my life and not letting OCD control me. That's fantastic, Freddie. Enjoy that. Inigo, he said, what do you think is more responsible for anxiety problems, the nervous system or the mind? Oh, I don't know why those two would be the choice. And it's not something I would consider. I find it useful because anxiety is an emotion we can have. And so there's no problem with having anxiety. If somebody is reacting to anxiety, right, so they're spending time and energy trying to like clean away anxiety, so I wouldn't see that as an issue with the nervous system or the mind. That's them choosing to spend time and energy on anxiety. Because even if there's a lot of anxiety, we could say that's like heat or humidity. So if I say like, hey guys, I can't do the live stream today because I wanna fight humidity. I need to find the cause of humidity and overcome it. And I'm gonna spend my day trying to fight the air around me because I feel it. I could spend all day. I could spend many days and weeks and months. I mean, in Barranquilla, the temperature is gonna be pretty similar every single day. So I would be fighting it for a long time. What if we don't have to see it as a problem? Teo. So do you have any advice for developing a story-based game, interactive art project with a purpose of helping people with OCD shine light on the subject through a fun narrative, not lessons? How would you simplify the subject brain mechanics of mental health for writing fiction? Oh, yeah, I mean, I don't have any particular advice, relevant to the topic right now. I think with any kind of creative project, it can be fun to think of what do I want to give. Like with any creative project, I'll usually identify a couple things I want to give. And that helps simplify things. Because OCD is very complex. It's going to be, very different for many different people. And so trying to, capture it all in one project can be quite complicated. But what if, so something I'm always aware of is like, I'm going to make lots of different things. And different people will find the things they're looking for in different elements of that. So rather than trying to get any one piece of creative work right, I want to actually just make as many as possible and keep things focused. So people who are looking for what they're looking for will find it in that particular piece, and lots of other people may not find something in that. So if you want to share something, yeah, what would you like to share? And then I see you asked about the fiction project. So I do have a fiction project. Actually, taking this mini vacation is just to edit up. I've printed out the fiction project, and so I'm not doing any other kind of work activities this weekend other than editing up the secret fiction project. FH said, I am part of this competition, and being among the winners will change my life. Job-wise and location-wise, how can I deal with the excitement, emotions, and stress until it will be announced? Well, so yeah, if the competition has already happened and there's nothing else you can do right now, when you notice the excitement about that, it can help see it like if you're taking care of a kid. And so that kid, you can understand that kid is always going to be like, are we there yet? Are we there yet? Is it happening yet? Did we win? Like, they're always going to want to ask. And so you can both understand why the kid is excited with that. But if you have a conversation with the kid every time, it's going to be pretty exhausting for you. If you're participating with the kid, like, oh, I don't know, let's go right now and think about whether we won it or not, or something like that. It's going to be very exhausting for you. So if there was a kid bringing these questions to you and you wanted to both recognize that they're excited with a lot of compassion, but you're also not going to engage with it right now, yeah, how would you interact with them? You can interact with your brain in that same way. Yeah, Dylan, you're sharing something on the contaminated clothes. Dylan said, I used to have bad clothes too, but if you want to wear those clothes, you can. You can wear wrong clothes on purpose, maybe even as a challenge to show your brain that you can, that you don't have to avoid them. Yeah, it's so useful to see that we can have that flexibility and freedom in our lives. I'll often think of it as range of motion. So yeah, maybe there was some kind of injury. So something becomes this thing we don't want to touch, right? Like we don't want to move around it in our lives. And what we do by starting to use these things again or go to these places again is that we bring range of motion back into our lives. We give ourselves that flexibility to go where we want to go, do what we want to do. And that can be an amazing thing to celebrate. But just like a physical injury, bringing that range of motion, it may feel difficult. So again, we've had a bunch of questions on like challenges today and like doing recovery. But if we look at it from that perspective of a range of motion and wanting the freedom and flexibility to do what we want to do, we're adding something in to our lives that we want to keep. We may do some exercises to go there that are going to feel intense, but we can do them with that focus on what we're adding in. So we're not just, I want to get rid of this pain in my shoulder, saying like, I want to be able to use my shoulder to lift weights in the gym again, or use my shoulder to lift up people in my life. So there's a clear action, I'm doing that. There's a clear thing I want to do in my life. And so that's what it's about. So I see you said I accidentally poured beer on my You Are Not a Rock book. Now I will need to accept it. Yeah, that was nice of you to give it a drink. Seaweed Kelp, thanks for stopping by. I hope you have a good day too. Carl, yeah, I see you asking about thoughts about harm. Of course, working with a therapist can be a really useful way to learn some useful skills around thoughts like that. Minchi said, I tried cutting compulsions while on a trip by not washing my hands as often as I used to. I got the flu after the trip, and now I'm trying to not associate that with me not being careful enough. The thing is, we are going to get, there are going to be times when we get sick, and the brain is going to want to kick into that controlling mode. But also, if we do the compulsions, then we are very actively making our mental health worse. So we're very actively practicing mental illness, and we can still get the flu. So we identify, we figure out what is the accurate or most useful way we want to take care of ourselves. And so I think this is really relevant to fears like contamination and stuff like that, and why values are so useful. So we may say look, I'm always gonna, here's when I'm always going to wash my hands. And it's not about trying to control some fear. That's not a thing that I have to cut out to work on some kind of challenge. This is just how I take care of washing my hands. Done. And I'm always gonna do that. And then, there are going to be other things that I'm not gonna do because I recognize that's just more of practicing mental illness. And if I care about my mental health or health in general, I don't wanna be caught up practicing mental illness too. So take care of yourself. Ignacio, thanks for joining. Thanks for being a part of the membership channel too. Everybody, there is a YouTube membership channel. We just wrapped up talking a bunch about loss, okay? Because so often the feared consequence underneath our compulsions is about this fear of losing something. And so we were just exploring a bunch of videos on that over on the membership channel. You can find it on YouTube. If you go to I think joining doesn't work well on iPhone. You've got to be on Android or go on desktop because it's, YouTube is associated with Google. So if you go on desktop, you just go to the URL of the channel, youtube.com/everybodyhasabrain/join, and the membership options will come up. We just wrapped up exploring a series on loss. I mean, since I'm kind of on a mini vacation, I know vacation values and travel comes up a lot, so I'm going to do a couple videos while I'm here on that, and those will be the next videos on the membership channel. Ayan said, I just constantly check my thoughts and I don't know what to do. I am always curious when somebody says they're checking their thoughts. The first thing I would look at there is what's your goal? Why are you checking your thoughts? What do you believe that's going to get you? August said, do you have any advice for studying for exams? I feel like it's going to go bad and that I'm not contributing as well as my friends to our studying. Not because I want to, but because I don't understand the subject well enough or have bad study techniques. Well, August, then it could be a great opportunity to look at just what are the actions of studying that you want to practice. Not getting caught up in am I doing this as well as everybody else? Am I letting people down? Whatever. But just, if you're studying right now, what are those actions you're going to do? Those actions need your time and energy rather than getting caught up in lots of judging yourself. Tricks said, how to stop reassuring myself. So I'd be curious. So say a coaching client asks me how to stop reassuring myself. The thing I would ask them is, you're the one reassuring yourself. So why are you doing it? I'd start, you're the one who's going to have the information here on how to stop it. Hayo, this is a great question. Hayo says here, can't we wrap today up on a high note when you're going to end it? Not like reassurance, but can you tell us about what that heavenly recovery feels like? We're doing so much work. We deserve it. Yeah, I mean, why not just share that number one secret tip that will guarantee recovery, perfect, certain recovery, unending. Why not just do that? Maybe we'll see. I have a feeling the power or the internet is going to cut out right when I'm about to share it at the end, but we'll see. We'll see what happens. It's a great idea. Yeah, Teo here on the contaminated clothes said, I probably fear that I will create an important memory, like, I don't know, getting a kiss with these clothes on, and then I will just remember that nice moment as bad. Yeah, you can see how it gets wrapped up in so many other compulsions this way, right? Because if we are validating the contamination, if we're like, oh no, those are bad and they are going to wreck some other experience, right? Can you see how we're creating this whole framework of there are good things and bad things, and I must keep this thing clean and that thing's dirty and it can't touch this, and so that whole framework we can blow up. You can see it's not helping us. But this is one of those areas where you'll probably see that also means throwing out some stuff, like conceptual stuff that you'd seen as good, right? Like this experience, like if we have an experience and then we tell our brain, oh, that was good because it didn't get contaminated with a thought. What we're telling our brain is, please brain, worry more about contamination because it's bad. So it's really important to recognize how we are creating this framework of beliefs of good and bad and clean and dirty that then creates the struggle for us. The brain is just following our instructions. What if there aren't like clean experiences, and what if there aren't bad clothes? So is there a way to start having more positive, spontaneous thoughts about myself? Most of mine are very cruel or negative, but I'm better now at not responding to them. I personally just took an approach to the brain that the brain's not very useful in general. So I didn't find, because the issue there, so yeah, this related to that framework I was just talking about. The issue isn't the positive or negative thoughts. The issue is us believing thoughts. So us just attaching importance to that stuff. Because you could ask, like, hey, if I'm walking down the street, can I just spontaneously see more good things? I'm tired of seeing garbage. I'm tired of seeing broken sidewalk tiles. Well, what if we can just have experiences that actually us trying to get some kind of right experience is what starts to skew things in a direction we dislike. So yeah, what if you don't have to have any kind of type of thought? Just whatever's there is there. So, yeah, he said, I feel like the mechanics of OCD are complex, but simple at the same time, no? I guess it could be simplified, like the brain just keeps trying to help you in all the wrong ways. But even there too, you see the brain, so this relates to what we were just talking about with the framework. Yeah, so we can't say the brain tries to help us in the wrong ways, but we're the ones that create that framework. Right? If we're telling the brain there are dirty things and clean things, there are bad things and there are good things, and it's good if we avoid the dirty things, then the brain isn't helping in the wrong way. The brain is helping based on the instructions we gave it. We tell the brain, I must avoid bad, contaminated things. And those clothes are contaminated with bad experiences. Right? So we made that up. Right? Clothes cannot be contaminated with bad experiences, and bad experience clothes cannot contaminate a kiss. So if I'm telling my brain that I want to avoid that, my brain then has to believe it. So then my brain is going, okay, this human is telling me that clothes can be contaminated with past experiences. Okay, so if that's true, then logically, so many other things are contaminated. And they're telling me that I need to avoid contaminated things because they'll wreck experiences. So the brain is just trying to do its job based on the beliefs we're sharing with it. So if we share these beliefs about things being contaminated and good and bad, and we need to avoid them, and right, that's not based in reality, the brain then has to engage with that reality and work very logically. And then we do not like that. But it is just trying to follow the rules that we set for it. So it can be useful to get more useful rules. Lewis, just how do you deal with a-holes, people who intentionally push buttons? Being OCD, it seems the lack of empathy types are drawn to us. Have you experienced this? No, what would you like to do differently? And what does it mean if somebody pushes your buttons? I'd explore that, yeah. Nick would like to announce that Nick rarely washes their hands. Oh, there's a beautiful bird. I don't know if everybody can hear. Oh, the bird stopped as soon as I was going to let everybody listen to it. It was singing beautifully. Away with Fairies. He said, I'm learning ACT techniques. I'm actually working on Russ Harris' book, The Happiness Trap, and I find it helpful big time. Do you know of a book that can help me with my chronic pain ACT-wise? Yeah, I'm not sure offhand. I can't remember a title Away with Fairies, but if you search for acceptance and commitment therapy, chronic pain, I know there are books out there. And just a lot of ACT books will be designed for the therapist. And yeah, you can grab a book. So you may actually find a textbook for a therapist or a healthcare practitioner explaining how to use ACT in a healthcare setting. Yeah, and that may be the useful book to pick up. Dylan, thank you so much for the donation. Dylan, thank you so much for the support you're sharing in the chat today with everybody. I really appreciate it. And Dylan said here, as we near the end, I wish to encourage everyone to take care of yourselves, give yourself lots of love and kindness. Indeed, it is a good weekend for doing that. Thank you, Dylan. Oh, Mitch, you're welcome. I hope you're giving lots of, kindness and care to yourself as you're looking at what you really want to grow. Jisha said, I have a weird question, haha. I don't really value dressing up, but sometimes I like it too. And sometimes social events are so I just do, even though I don't value it. I'm in the middle. Well, actually, why does it have to be an either or? Why can't sometimes you want to dress up and sometimes you don't? Henry said, during your journey, did you relapse a lot? What helped you stay in the journey? Yeah, so at the beginning, I think I was lucky in that, sure, I especially at the start, I'd cut out a compulsion, and then, maybe I'd go a couple weeks, and then I'd come up with some reason to relapse, and then I'd cut out another compulsion, and then, so I'd say, especially in the beginning, there was a lot, so there was a lot of then learning about what is it that pulls me off the path. And so that was helpful to learn from the very start, that I had to recognize I would usually come up with some kind of good reason to chase after the compulsion. And then I would hate myself for getting lost, and then I would just get more lost. And so yeah, very early on, a lot of compulsions and relapses. So there's a course I made it's on the Toolkit store called the Relapse Diagnostic course. So it covers all the exercises I found really useful for understanding what is it that takes me off of the path. And then from there, it's about learning to start to see those things as the compulsions. And so that's why, I don't know if you caught earlier, I was talking about how a lot of the things we may feel we like actually create the problems we hate. So I had to start to recognize that a lot of these things that I liked were what would keep taking me off into relapse. So if I didn't want to relapse, then I also didn't want to do those things that I thought were good or reasonable and so on. So yeah, I find it's, for the types of exercises I suggest for this are about starting to draw out how the relapses start happening. So you see in the Relapse Diagnostic, a bunch of the exercises are to identify the journey that takes you into relapse. And so there I use like a spaceship metaphor. So like, how do we keep going off course? And then yeah, we just start to put more and more supports in place so that when we feel that urge to wander off the path, we recognize it more quickly. It helped me. There's an exercise in You Are Not a Rock. It's also in the Relapse Diagnostic course, to identify actions that are on the path, so actions that we really value, actions that are compulsions, that are way off the path, and usually we just recognize those two sets of actions. But then what helped me I would say the most, what becomes more important if you want to sustain recovery, is identifying a third set of actions. Does this look like 3 columns now? A third set of actions that are just off the path. Because the just off the path actions are the ones that we start to recognize, hey, if I step into these actions, that's where I need to stop. Because for so long, we've taken kind of an illness, disaster first approach, where we wait until things are really terrible. And then we go, okay, now I should get back to actions I value. But if we identify those actions that are just starting to take us off the path, and we stop it there, it becomes way easier to stay on the path. Oh, Dylan, I'm glad you heard the beautiful singing bird. Oh, and Jisha, yes, you heard it as well. Oh, Rowan, you asked about what happened to my eye. I think it was a mixture. So I've been staying up in the mountains, and then when I came down and it was so humid, I think there's actually like a little pimple or something in my eye, because there's a spot that kind of stings, or something bit me while I was sleeping, and so it just swelled up the other day. So I actually thought it was a good practice to come and do the live stream while having, a kind of an eye that's not in ideal shape. But it'll be fine. It probably is just my skin reacting to the humidity. Leo said, the more I think, it seems that in the end, everything boils down to fear, past, present, and future. And the solution being acceptance. What are our thoughts on it? Enjoy the trip. Oh, thank you. On the question of, like, does everything boil down to fear? The only thing I would say there, actually not the only thing, I find it, you can have lots of compulsions that have nothing to do with fear. And like we kind of, you can have lots of compulsions that are about things you like. So yeah, I wouldn't get too attached to fear. Although again, maybe we were gonna have the one special, perfect, complete answer to recovery. Right? You can see we have that tendency. So I wouldn't just say it's about fear, but accepting any experience, whatever the unwanted experience can be, or whatever the wanted experience can be, is useful. Max, so you just got here and you heard me say compulsion. Did I overcome OCD? Yeah, I was diagnosed with OCD many years ago. I had pretty severe OCD. And I do not struggle with any compulsions or obsessions or whatever's at all anymore. Mm-hmm. Teo So if I want my brain to follow different rules, simply it just understands physical action, right? Not telling it, not thinking, not reading it, not writing, just forced action. So I wouldn't say just forced action, because also this I always bring this up with contamination. It requires us to change the goal too. If we are still right, like if I'm still judging this as contaminated, I'm like, oh, I'm cutting out compulsions, so I'm gonna drink from this dirty, contaminated, almost spilled it, poisoned thermos, and I'm still in my head being like, this is bad, this is terrible. I'm just gonna be really anxious because I'm still telling the brain this is really bad, even though I'm drinking it. So there is a cognitive element. It is changing the action, but also we have to change the goal too, right? Like I want to drink out of this, not like, oh, I hate touching this contaminated thing. I hope the feeling goes away, right? If we're in our heads still actively chasing this, unhelpful goal, trying to get rid of things, etc., then yeah, it's going to continue. So it is still aligning the cognitive changes with the physical action changes. Otero said, I wish I could meet Mark, that's me, yeah, one day though. I'm in Prague, not Mexico. I'm unable to travel. Oh, I'll be in Europe again someday. Oh, Besto, that's kind of you. Teo, yeah, you said, where do you put that on the path, off the path chart? I had it in Excel and forgot about the next day. How do I keep it in my head? Well, so it can be useful to get it outside of your head. Like the exercise is to put it on paper. But you do have to learn it. Right? We can't always be like, oh, I did the compulsion because I couldn't see my paper telling me what to do. So the skill is like, what's going to help you start to learn that? Because yeah, it still has to be our responsibility. If we're like, oh, it's the paper's job to keep me on the path, the paper doesn't get paid enough. Roman, absolutely. We can do live streams even if things are not ideal. Max said, well, thank you. Said, my OCD is pretty severe right now. I've hoped that I can overcome it. Wishing you and everyone here all the best. Oh yeah, thank you, Max. Yeah, you totally can. Like, things were really severe when I went to get help. But even then, even when I was doing stuff, like when I went to get help, for instance, wasn't using knives. Like I had just stopped using knives in my life. I did not see that as a problem. I went to get help initially for depression, and it did not occur to me that there were other things that might be making me depressed. Like if I just stood in front of my stove and watched it, I just thought that was necessary. The number of times I would go back home to check if it was locked or to check if an appliance was unplugged and stare. I had compulsions because not only would I check that everything was unplugged, but then I started to need to pull the plugs further away. Like I was like, ooh, that plug looks too close to that outlet, which is really impossible. That not only that the appliance was going to catch on fire, but that also somehow it had to be really, really far away from the outlet to prevent the fire. But that was just normal for me. And there were so many other compulsions, but I didn't see them as a problem. I really thought they were necessary. So yeah, Maxi, you're already, recognizing there's a bunch of stuff here and you're finding resources. That is fantastic. It is very, very changeable and doable. Oh, Dylan, thank you for enjoying my futuristic poison thermos. This is actually an incredible thermos. Because I've had this maybe for 2 years, and it is a thermos from Muji, so the kind of Japanese stationary home goods store, and it is astoundingly good at keeping temperature. If I put something hot in it, I can put the thermos in the fridge and take it out the next day, and the hot liquid will still be hot. So it's been great for like if I put coffee or tea in it or just hot water and take it on a trip or something. It's amazing. Oh, somebody just scored something. Oh, Leo, you said, can you give an example of a compulsion of something you like and is not related to fear? Yeah, so all of the what we might typically throw in as addictions, compulsions, we're like, oh, I just really wanna, have whatever at this moment. Absolutely, you can say that it is about fear, like the fear of I'm not gonna get rid of this craving, or I'm not going to have a good feeling unless I, eat this, drink this, smoke this, whatever right now. A lot of compulsions people do on social media, right? They may feel kind of bored and they're just like, I just want to go like check something, scroll something right now. I feel like I want to scroll more and more and more and more. So you could say a lot of the scrolling compulsions. When we start to suggest people not doing all the compulsions on their phones, sometimes people can get scared and be like, whoa, no, but how am I going to not be bored? Or how am I going to find interesting things? Or how am I going to get likes on social media? And yeah, you could say, especially with how some people may use social media, a lot of those may be fear-based. Like, oh no, if people don't like my post, then I'm afraid they don't like me or something like that. A lot of the times, people will have compulsions around control and certainty and think they like that. And again, yeah, you could say there's a fear there, a fear of uncertainty or a fear of not having control. But often the way people will experience it is that they like it, that they liked getting that control, they liked getting that certainty from checking. But it just creates more and more problems. Everybody will wrap up shortly. Henry, so what do you recommend you do after relapsing? And you've identified your things that keep you off your path, or in my case, the things that barely keep me off my path. I was doing well for a while. Yeah, so then I always look at supports. So even we talk about this in the Draw Yourself as a Garden workshop. At the end, we look at the actions we want to do and we look at the challenges. So the challenges might be like relapsing and stuff like that. And we then do a row of supports. And I always emphasize to everybody at the workshop that the supports will likely become the focus, not just the actions, that it's actually those support activities. So what's gonna help us stay on the path? So yeah, if you've recognized what's taking you off the path, then I would ask, so what are the supports that you can add into your life that are gonna help you, kind of have some guardrails on the path, or have indicators that are easily gonna tell you when you're wandering off? Away with Fairies. Yeah, this is a great point on chronic pain. Said, my chronic pain works like OCD thoughts. They both protect me from something else way scarier than themselves. My OCD from other thoughts and my chronic pain from actions I fear doing. Oteo. So you asked about individual coaching. No, I work with people one-on-one. Yeah, a lot of my day-to-day during the week is working with coaching clients. You can find out about the coaching, kind of the process and the work I do if you go to my personal website, so markfreeman.ca/coaching. Yeah, so I really enjoy working with people as we explore changes. I think it also, because I've been doing that for many years now. So I think, one of the advantages there is there are a lot of consistencies, and people run into very similar challenges with our brains. And so it does help to kind of be able to share that with people, because we are so spread out around the world with an experience that we so often think is kind of unique or we don't really talk about it. But the reality is so many people around the world are experiencing the exact same issues and learning skills to navigate those issues differently and do the things they want to do in life. So yeah, I really enjoy exploring that with people. Oh, see that bird just flew on by. Minchi said, I have a question about setting specific actions for different activities and doing them proactively. Can I ask, how do you go about setting those actions? Yeah, even one of the things that really helped me, I did this for a while when I was working on skills. Each Sunday, I would identify actions I wanted to do for the week that were just going to like nourish me, actions I wanted to do proactively, like you said there. And then really looking at, okay, how do I put supports in place? How do I, like whether I need to put up signs, I'm gonna put up, notifications in my calendar to remind me, but also what do I need to have in place so I can do those things? Like I'll often share, and this is still true, that my mental health practice is just breakfast. I make sure I'm going to make breakfast for myself and give myself breakfast. And so that requires doing some actions so that that's doable. So even that's a great example, and you could adapt this to whatever you want to explore. If somebody said, look, this week I'm going to make breakfast for myself every day, then we would say, okay, what do I need so that it's easy to make breakfast for myself every day this week? And if I'm gonna make breakfast for myself every day this week, what do I need to change in terms of the compulsions and other stuff I might do that's not relevant? And that's probably going to involve changes the night before and changes in the morning. We can do that for everything. So for me, I'd look at breakfast. Everybody else, you may have a different thing. If you're gonna do that action every day this week, what supports do you need in place to make it easy? And what are you going to cut out that would get in the way of that? And so that covers, the cutting out is how we drop the compulsions. The supports to make it easy are what's gonna help us stay on the path. Yeah, try that out for whatever you'd like to be doing. But yeah, absolutely, if you have any questions, feel free to share them in the comments here on YouTube or reach out on Instagram or wherever. Misty said, since we're not relying on Google to decide what's safe or okay to do, how do you determine what your guidelines are? Yeah, but I would look at what are the things I want to do and how do I do them well. So if it's health related, there may be situations where we are going to, ask a doctor or ask a healthcare professional or a healthcare organization, and then just use those guidelines, or if it's around a particular illness, your doctor will tell you, here's what to look for, or here's when it is useful to reach out, or here's when we check. But I would still be looking at how do I want to do something well, rather than how do I avoid a bad thing. So even when we say safe, like safe, just like recovery, it's very difficult to say what that means. And so then we're always trying to chase, do I feel safe? Rather than trying to avoid the bad thing, what is the good thing we want to create? Because that'll still encompass doing it safely. But not only will we be doing it safely, but we'll also be creating something we want to see in our lives. Henry619 asks, can you give some examples of supports? So yeah, it's going to vary from thing to thing. So like with the breakfast, for example, one of the key, so I'd say like maybe two key supports. One was making sure I had food. So it was actually emphasizing the trip to the grocery store as the more important action. So I've got to protect that, because it was always easy to be like, oh yeah, I want to eat breakfast, but oh yeah, I don't have time to go and get groceries. To say, oh, okay, like I need to set boundaries, and even say, oh, I can't go and do this because that's when I'm going to get groceries. So that was one support. Another support was recognizing, because in the morning I would have all sorts of intrusive thoughts and I would do all sorts of compulsions in the past. So it was recognizing in the morning, if I just add in an extra task, it's gonna be exhausting, or I'll struggle with it a lot. So a key support was actually making breakfast the night before, so they were there and ready. And so again, that idea of easy. So whatever it is you want to be doing, what would make it easy? And Puvendran, you asked, which is better, playing chess or playing a musical instrument for mental health? But I would say it's not about the thing, it's about how you do it. With either one, if we're chasing some kind of goal or certainty, or we're judging ourselves or others based on what we're doing, then both can be bad for mental health, right? Because we're just practicing compulsions. But maybe if we approach them as an opportunity to learn, as an opportunity to give, then either of them can be useful to mental health. Yeah, so it's not about the thing, it's about how we do it. Boasting Gamer said, how can I start exercising? I feel like my only motivation is looking attractive to myself and others, which may be hindering my progress. Yeah, so the thing I always recommend with exercise, again, think about what we're growing. So yeah, what are the skills you want to build? Like, do you want to build strength or endurance or flexibility? And we measure those. So even picking some kind of like activity can be really helpful. Like whether we sign up for a race or we're doing something like CrossFit or something like that. Yeah, what is the kind of goal that you want to grow and keep in your life versus just trying to manipulate people's minds? Isaac said, is our brain strong enough to create voices in our head? I have OCD, but I'm scared of my imagination. And sometimes when I'm so stressed, it feels like my brain is loud. Yeah, so checking if the brain can make voices in our head, it's actually a classic reassurance checking compulsion. Our brains can be super loud. We don't have to attach any kind of particular meaning to that. What if we want to have a loud brain? And we can take it along with us while we do things we want to do. And with that, we're going to wrap things up. Everybody, I know there was the request, of course, we should wrap things up by sharing the special, super amazing, of course, key to recovery, but also how wonderful and blissful recovery is without the brain doing all of the weird, intrusive stuff it did in the past. And I would say that's amazing. Like even going on a trip, one of the best parts is all of the, like in the past I had all sorts of compulsions around travel, and I on multiple trips, I would always stay up 24 hours before the trip because I was so convinced I would miss it. But also, I'd always been doing so many compulsions, so I'd also have all sorts of things I needed to get done because I hadn't done them because I'd been doing compulsions. And it's so beautiful not have to do all of that stuff anymore. It is amazing to have a brain that acts very differently. And in terms of the number one absolute key to recovery, I hope I have enough power on my phone to share this before it runs out, and it could run out any second. So I want to say thank you first to everybody who joined today and shared support with everybody. Thank you, everybody who shared donations today. I really appreciate that. And so, in respect of all of the support everyone shared, I'll now offer the number one key to recovery that guarantees absolutely certain recovery with a clean brain that only has clean thoughts and right thoughts and never creates problems for us ever, or has any unwanted experiences, not emotional unwanted experiences or physical unwanted experiences or thought unwanted experiences. The absolute number one key to that is oh